It's our first podcast. And we are here with some special guests.
Yeah.
Wow.
Who was a first mission family in Mongolia, 1990. Yeah, it's really honored to meet you guys. And
Yeah.
we had some hosho today.
Yeah, beautiful hosho.
Oh, yeah, we had really
Sute
special
Thai.
dinner
It's
Yeah.
every
together.
time today, yeah.
Thai.
Oh, I'm there.
Thai. Very good.
We forgot to say your name.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, Sweetie Pie and John.
John Lutz family.
Lutz, yeah.
Lutz family.
Yeah.
John and Ivani.
Oh, Yvonne. Yeah, well, that's your...
I went by Bonnie when we lived in Mongolia. So,
Yeah.
similar.
In the
But how
country.
did you hear about Mongolia first?
Yeah.
Like,
September 1981 in my Bible school in a chapel.
1981.
Yeah.
Okay.
In September, a speaker said, Who of you will go to Libya, Albania, Mongolia? This is 1981. He said, these three countries have no believers and no workers.
Uh-huh.
And I remember, I was a young Christian. I remember I went back to my dorm room and I was just crying, weeping. And I said,
Wow.
oh God, I don't have anything. I still don't, I don't think. Let me see. No. Look, God, I have nothing to offer. I'm not from a Christian family. I have nothing to offer you. But if Jesus is not known, Lord, please, here am I, send me. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And I want to tell you the truth. There were three countries. On my list, Mongolia was number 3. I didn't want to go to Mongolia. It's scary. So Libya was first. We spent a year focusing on Libya, and God said no. And I said, Lord, I just wasted a year of my life. He said, no, you didn't. Your heart is getting ready. The next year, Albania. At that time, Albania said, over their airport, they put a sign, there's no God in Albania. It was a very hard country. Spent another year, God said no. A third year, I said,
Another year praying
Yeah.
with other people. Other college students, they pray and fast during lunch.
so 1983, I said, okay, Lord, I give up. All that's left is Mongolia. And then it's like, everything opened. Everything opened. And this is when I was in the library at my school, and I'm looking at a shelf.
what was it? Was it-
Columbia, South Carolina.
Oh, wow.
Columbia Bible College.
Columbia Bible College. And there's a book on the shelf, Peoples of the World or something. And I open it, and it's this reindeer people in Mongolia. And here I am. Mongolia at that time was an unreached country,
Yeah.
unreached
It's
people.
closed.
And so I'm reading this article about a people in Mongolia, above Hofsko Lake, that are not Mongols, Tsatan people, and they live off reindeer. And I'm thinking, God, you broke my heart with Mongolia, the country, and now there are peoples, different ethnic groups in the country. How are they going to be reached? You know, so it's like, it's not only hard, but it's harder inside than it is outside. I was like, oh, Lord. So I said, okay, Lord, I'm going until you stop me. And he never stopped us. Isn't that awesome? He never stopped us. And then he started opening doors. And then we met our first YWAM guy, this guy, George Otis. He's the guy who put the article in the magazine that I found one day on Mongolia.
Christian magazine.
Yep. And it said, somehow we found news he's sponsoring a conference in Tokyo, Japan on Mongol evangelism in 1984. And John Gibbons and
Max Hatfield.
Tokashi, the Japanese interpreter, New Testament starting, and other people, big missions around the world were being gathered. The big guys, the executives.
Open doors.
Okay, Vonnie, yeah, lots of missions are from different countries. YWAM was there, different people. And so I went to Seattle, Washington, from the other side of the country, and said, George, how can I go to the conference? He said, oh, sorry, you're just a student. This is for mission executives. We're deciding, what should be done for Mongolia. And I said, and we weren't with the mission or anything. I said, well, God wants me to go. And he said no. So I talked to his assistant, Paul Feliers with YWAM. I said, how can I go? He said, join a mission and be their representative at this conference. Okay, the conference is a big deal because the whole world is now starting to think about YWAM. I mean, Mongolia. So the whole international world. Sorry. And so we joined a mission called Pioneers in 1984. And then this guy, George's assistant,
Paul Felitas.
He says, okay, now you can go. And so we went to this conference, and we're the youngest people. We're nobodies.
How old
Wait.
were you then? Were you back?
Our mission didn't have any executives that wanted to go to this conference on Mongolian evangelism. So they said, we'll send you. Pioneers said, we'll send you as our representative. And so then John told Paul Felitas, they're going to send me as a representative. Is that okay? And he said, that's okay. It's fine.
Okay, anyway, so
he's the only college student.
But this is what you got to love about God. So we go, I'm this college student, and I'm fixing tea. Would you like
20
some
years
sugar? Can I get you some water? Because they're the big guys. Big guys meaning
How old were you?
They have millions of dollars. These mission, and they're talking about all this stuff. Okay,
He was
I don't know.
probably 24.
No, so I was an older student
24.
because we married. Anyway,
You were married at 23.
oh,
you were-
and I'm
you
so
were
glad
20.
we did.
You
How
were
old are you?
24.
I'm 25. Melman is 20.
I'm 23.
Yeah.
Okay, that's okay. But the point is,
That would've
at
been-
that conference,
Yeah, 24.
I was the only one that ended up in Mongolia. So there's all these executives talking. I'm saying, what do you want? He said, I want you to go in. Psalm 37, very important. God spoke to me in Tokyo, Psalm 37, and constantly says, dwell in the land and cultivate faithfulness. So live in the land of Mongolia and plant and sow and do everything that the harvest will be is faithfulness. And all I knew was I knew God wanted us to live there. And so that started our journey. But whatever it took, God wants us to live in Mongolia. Mongolia
great.
was one of the hardest places on earth at that time.
Really?
It was considered the hardest,
I can't
toughest
believe.
non-Muslim
Really?
place on earth. First, we'd taken a trip in
Good job.
1987 to Mongolia. And we're Americans at that time. America didn't have any diplomatic relations with Mongolia. So we went to the university and we said, what can we do to live in your country? And he looked at us. He said, learn English. And we're like, no, we know English. He said, no, learn English so well you can teach it in our country. And so we thought, okay, we can do that. Yeah. Okay, so this trip, we stayed a week in Mongolia as hunters. It was the only way we can get in Mongolia. So we had to pay a hunting fee to this organization in Seattle. It no longer exists, Julchen Travel or something.
Oh, wow.
No, it was Kleinberger Travel. So we went as hunters, but the only thing we hunted was Satan. Oh, yeah. So we go in for a week, and we could tell you about that week another time. It was a crazy week. But what came out of it is you've got to learn English so well that you can teach it. So we kept on traveling on the train, that same trip, through the Soviet Union. We end up in Berlin, and we called John Gibbons in England. He was the Bible guy. At that time, he wasn't in Mongolia. He's in England.
The Bible translator.
And we didn't get him. We got one of his assistants. And we said, where can we meet Mongols and teach English in East Europe? And he said, go to Hungary. Go to Budapest, Hungary. So we took the train. We're just on the same trip. We took the train to Budapest.
You went to Budapest for only meeting with Mongolians.
Well, no. And to teach English. So while we're in Budapest, as we're getting off the train, we see Mongols and we say, yes, God, this is it. So we
Wow.
applied for teaching jobs. This is on our trip. On that trip, we got 2 teaching jobs. So now we have jobs,
Two offers.
2 offers for each of us. So now our trip is almost over. We have new jobs and we have to go back to America. So we go back for 2 weeks.
That
We
time
tell
you-
everybody,
That time you had no kids.
no kids. That made it a
Whoa.
lot easier.
Yeah, whoa.
Yeah.
So we tell everybody,
back.
our church and our families, everybody, we're going back in 2 weeks. We're going to Budapest, Hungary, on our way to Mongolia. So we go back to Budapest, and we start our teaching jobs. And I'm miserable. We're teaching English, but only with Hungarians. At that time, we were trying to reach out to Mongols who were there, but all the Mongols were separated. The language school was separated. Everything was separated. They wouldn't allow any access to foreigners. The Mongols were it was a very different thing during those days. So we as Americans I couldn't even go to their school. They wouldn't give us permission. Okay, so this is important because this will kind of trigger how we got into Mongolia. After a year of being miserable, like I don't care about English teaching, I don't care about teaching Hungarians. We're here for the Mongols. My lovely bride had a vision. She said, wait a minute. They teach Mongolian at the university in Budapest. And the Mongolians go to that university. Why don't we apply to be Mongolian language students at the university in Budapest?
Well, we had found out from Judith, the Hungarian. She told us about the Mongolian language program.
Right, but this is a big deal because all of a sudden everything shifts. And so we go to the university and we apply as language student. They said, this is a little unusual. We've had a Finnish person and actually Hungarian studying Mongolian. And we've got a German guy, but well, not yet. But we've got to tell you, there's one thing with this program. If you come in as language students, you have to spend time with Mongolians. And we were like, yes, that was the open door we needed because we couldn't. No, I'm serious. As Americans at that time, we were the enemies. They wouldn't let us go near their school. They were watching us. There were government agents watching the Mongol students in East Europe, all of East Europe, but in Hungary watching. We tried to do it anyway. So now we go to the language school and they assign us Mongolian language students. And now we're with the Mongolian family as our language teacher. He's our teacher and he brings us into his home and all that's a start because what that meant 2 years later, we did not go in as English teachers. You know how he went into Mongolia? Not as English teachers, as language students from the university in Budapest.
What was your first impression? What do you thought? You were there 1987, first time you guys went through Mongolia.
First impression, wow.
Do you remember?
Yeah. First impression was probably how beautiful she was in Mongolia. But the second impression
That's sweet.
was, it was a little scary. We were intimidated by Mongolia. So you mean when we first arrived as tourists the first time? You know, we take the train in and as foreigners, everybody's watching us. We assigned it. Everything was strict. Julchen was very strict. The tour guide was with us every second. We were followed all the time. You know, if we go to the bathroom, somebody's in the bathroom next to me. You know, taking a podcast or something. No, but they were really careful. And
Okay.
there was always it was just really. We were terrified in one sense. But we also knew God sent us. So it was like, Lord, you got to do it. So one day we asked, we want to see an orphanage. We want to see something that's not touristy. We asked our tour guide. She took us. The next day she was gone. We never saw her again because she did something outside of the script. At that time, you had to follow the plan every day. And because it's communist, you know, it was so tight. So we said, we want to do something that isn't part of the plan. And she took us to, an orphanage.
Yeah.
The kids with no parents.
Yes, I know.
And so the next day, she was sick, and they said, she'll be sick the rest of your trip. She's sick.
She was sacked. We'd say she was sacked.
Okay. So our impression was actually kind of scary.
Also the guy, the bellboy at the hotel.
Yeah.
Remember, he came up to our room and he was like, he was worried that there might be cameras.
Oh yeah.
Filming him. And I don't know what if he wanted to ask us.
He wanted to change
something.
money.
Oh, he wanted to change money with us, but he was afraid in the hotel room that there might be cameras.
And he was like, there's a camera, then they're listening and watching us, and we're like, oh. So we started singing Christian songs very loud, so they could hear us. Jesus.
And a few times I tried to take pictures of Mongolians, and I got in trouble. There would be like either a man in a police uniform or a plainclothes police man. They would come up and they would start yelling at the people that I was taking pictures of.
Yeah.
You know, that they shouldn't be posing for the pictures. Another time we were playing Frisbee with these kids. We brought a Frisbee with us and we got this big circle. All these young people, we were playing, throwing the Frisbee across.
Since 1987,
And
remember, this is a
guy
tourist
came up
trip.
and started yelling at the young people and told them that they had to disperse. And
What about the candy?
And then we were playing again after the guy left. We were playing again, and then we were like passing out candy that we brought from America to the kids. And this guy came up and started yelling at the kids and told them to spit the candy out of their mouths.
Oh
And-
my goodness.
You were poisoning them.
Or to give the candy back.
Very sad.
That they couldn't have, capitalist pigs candy, basically.
So honestly-
we were dangerous, basically.
So our impression of Mongolia
Sorry.
then was like North Korea now. That's what we thought.
Okay, okay.
That was our impression.
Oh my goodness.
Like everything we do
Not
is so
bad.
monitored, and we're gonna get in trouble. And
If we play
No,
frisbee,
yeah.
or if we take pictures, or if we give out candy, we get in trouble.
Okay, you got in Mongolia now.
okay,
After being in Budapest for 3 years.
Yeah.
1990. Which month was it?
ooh,
August 1990, we came in. Yeah, we could have. So the head of the Mongolian language department at Lorand University,
Edgeton.
Edgerton. The head of the Mongol language department, he was the one who worked it out so that we could be Mongolian language students at the University of Ulaanbaatar. And so he told us like January 1990, but it was so cold and we just thought, we're going in with a baby. We don't know like what we're going to be facing, in the winter. So we thought it'd be better to go in the summer when it's, we can kind of gradually get used to the cold.
Yeah.
So we went in August. After we had a team retreat. We went out into Czechoslovakia for a team retreat because we had 3 single teammates. We went in, we were the first missionary team to enter Mongolia.
Wow.
We had 3 single teammates. We had a team retreat in Czechoslovakia up in the Tatra Mountains. The
Tatra maybe, yeah.
Tatra Mountains.
But doesn't matter.
And then we
She is cute.
and then we got ready to move to Mongolia, and we all went together. The 6 of us.
Okay, you come to Mongolia as a language students in the same university that we graduated.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
really
interesting.
Yeah.
And how long you lived in UB for as a language students? Your first 2 years?
Language student just 1 year, right?
1 year.
It's 2 years, 3 years.
In UB, yeah.
Yeah, about that.
But meanwhile, but our vision as a team was to get out because I had the reindeer people in my heart. We took a team there, and one of them stayed. A woman stayed. We took a team to the Gobi. I took Lou, the 40-year-old guy.
Not a team.
Well,
like
an
a
individual.
single
An individual. Okay. A team did the Hofskole, but and then we took a team to Halved and or an individual Halved and Binogi, and so even in the first 2 years, even if we were living in Ulaanbaatar, our heart was always to go out because we realized God's putting people in Ulaanbaatar good, but what about the countryside? What about Darhan?
Yes.
So what about Darhan? This John Gibbon guy said, "Oh no, Darhan, no, we got that."
I'm planning a church.
Yeah, you don't know. Nobody goes there. That's our territory. We're already moving there. Erdenet, YWAM was starting to. The Swedish couple, Magnus and Marie. You've heard of them, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
They planted the church in.
And so the big cities were starting to be targeted. And then, so even those first 3 years, we were thinking, well, okay, we need to make sure that the whole country. We can't all stay here. And then as we saw God, not only all of a sudden there's Koreans and Japanese and Filipinos
Taiwanese.
and Taiwan and Chinese, and people are coming to reach Mongolia.
That's
It's
awesome.
amazing. Within
Yeah.
that first 3 years. But that also kept the vision before us. Wait, we need to keep a vision to keep going out.
Yes.
And so that was our contribution. Is that we have to reach the whole country. Every IMEC has to be reached. We have to make sure, that we had somebody living everywhere.
That was your focus that time.
Yeah, I mean,
What was the kind of culture shock for you when you come to Mongolia?
Everything being rationed.
Did you feel things?
yeah, we were
Everything
so
was rationed. Like you'd go to the store and the whole aisle is just jam. Jam from like Eastern Europe.
Bulgaria.
There wasn't any other, there weren't choices. It was just like,
There was nothing from China. Man, this is
Whole aisle of jam.
nothing from China at that time. Nothing.
if we had to get ration cards. So you could only get so much rice a month. You could only get so much flour, so much sugar.
We heard that a lot.
Eggs. It was hard to find any eggs.
No
hard
eggs,
time.
no, yeah.
Couldn't get cheese. So what we did is we got there were Russian stores. So we were going to the Russian store because we could get cheese there, we could get oatmeal there, we could get things there that we couldn't find in the Mongolian stores. So we did that.
If they let us a few times.
They did that. We did that until they started asking for the propusk, which is the Russian identity card.
Yeah.
So then, we couldn't go in anymore.
I remember
'cause we
my
weren't
dad
Russians.
was talking about.
We weren't Russians. So,
But you look like maybe.
Yeah.
well, I think,
Especially you.
I think we passed for Russians for a little while. But then, they required that.
Yeah, because it was right after that revolution, 1990. And
Yeah.
Right.
Just
Yeah.
after that.
that time we were both born yet.
Yeah.
Because
Wow.
it's
No,
like
you were
you
not
guys
born
there
yet.
before us.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny.
Isn't it funny?
That's funny.
I understand. Like when I
interesting.
ask the questions, it's because it was like almost 30 years ago, and it's hard to remember
That-
For
every
us
single
too.
details
No, it's very hard to remember.
because we were not even there yet, right?
Yeah.
And
That's funny. No, man.
And when did you move to Sanshan? You said you lived in Mongolia around 5 years.
Well, from 90 to 95
5.
and a half, yeah. Yeah.
But in UB in Sanshan, in Gobi.
Yeah, so I was a team leader for Pioneers, and my job was to get everybody in their place. So in other words, I would take
They
people to
have a
Gobi,
vision
to
for
Hoofschool, to
certain people who-
Hovd, and then we're like,
Satang.
Uh-huh.
You took Rita up to the
yeah, Tatang. And so we're like, what do we do? Lord, where do you want us? So I went to UNICEF, United Nations Children's Fund, and I said, where's the hardest place in Mongolia? I want the hardest place. Where's the toughest place to live?
Wow.
And the guy was a Christian. God had put an American man over this United Nations organization in Mongolia. It was a very important
And he
position
was a Christian.
because he could put people. And he said the Gobi is the hardest place in Mongolia. I said, let's go. We want to go to the Gobi. Can you get my wife and I there? And he said, okay, you got to work with UNICEF, and we can work with the Mongolian Children's
Center.
Center. Yeah. So we made a contract. Okay, we'll bring the world to your province in the Gobi, and we're bringing UNICEF. We'll bring opportunities. So, in other words, from outside Mongolia, bring doctors and even concerts and different exposure to the Gobi Desert of the rest of the world. It's kind of a weird thing, but because they were concerned about the children in the Gobi, life was hard for camel herder children.
Equipment for the handicapped.
Equipment, wheelchairs. I mean, okay, anything to help the standard of living in the Gobi. And so he said, well, there's Dorongov or Umangov, and Umangov is harder. But we think for you and your family, we'll put you in Dorongov because it has a train. And you could, you come to Ulaanbaatar and it'd be a little easier. So that's where, basically it was through UNICEF, this Christian guy, that we got in the Gobi. Because we wanted the place that was hardest to get to. And no foreigners were thinking about the Gobi. It was a hard place to live. So think about it. We entered the country and it was hard. Then God says, the Gobi. And the Gobi, there wasn't even ration. There wasn't anything to ration. There was very little there at that time. Meat.
Yeah, and bread.
Meat.
Meat and bread.
There was no oil. There was nothing. So our first oil was a
Nothing.
camel fat, camel hump.
Camel ham.
Just the fat. So we had to kind of boil it, melt it, and get the oil
Oh.
to use hoshor or anything. But the camel, it wasn't so good. But
We had very little
Sounds but
vegetables, so we
interesting.
had dehydrated vegetables.
well, we brought ourselves. Yeah,
that we brought ourselves, and then we sprouted bean sprouts.
Yvonne, tell us about that difficult winter.
Oh,
We lived in
yeah.
the
Winter
apartment.
in Сайн.
Sanction,
Yeah.
yeah.
When did we arrive, Ronnie? Tell us about that.
Well, I think we arrived and it was cold.
January.
And usually we would have to walk from the train station in the middle of the night. And we were usually bringing like a trunk from Ulaanbaatar because we kept an apartment in Ulaanbaatar. So we'd have a place to stay when we came out to Ulaanbaatar.
Uh-huh.
So we rented an apartment in Ulaanbaatar and then we moved to Сайн. So when we would come in, it would be, middle of the night, and my husband would have to carry the trunk, and usually my daughter would ride on top of the trunk. So he was carrying the trunk and my daughter at least 2 miles into town in the middle of the night.
But it was
Now, the first time we arrived, we might have had a car pick us up. That first time.
Oh yeah, maybe.
We might
Well,
have-
we waited hours and hours.
We might have had a car.
They forgot about us.
We waited for a while, and then they remembered to get us. But on subsequent trips, we would have to, walk ourselves unless we could get somebody who was driving into town. So the winters, I think we were there 2 winters because we were there 2 years. So yeah, when we first arrived, we lived with a Mongolian family in their house. And their house...
And they didn't want us.
And they didn't really want us, but we were paying
They
them.
didn't like us at all. They treated us very badly.
Sorry.
Yeah. But they did give up their bedroom for us, which, that's
nice.
a big sacrifice.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's so
So
Well, we were
nice.
paying
we
them,
were
yeah.
paying them something. But I mean, it was kind of like living in a yurt because we had no running
Ger, yeah.
water. Or a ger. We had no running water. They would bring in water, from where?
I got
It was walking water.
I got
From
it.
Yeah.
the water truck, I
No.
guess. So they would bring the water in, and they had kind of like a sink. It was one where there was a tank of water at the top, and then you would turn the spigot. The water would come out the spigot, and then it would go down into a bucket.
Oh yeah,
And you didn't want that
see
bucket to overflow because otherwise you had a big mess. Because the bucket was the wastewater.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a sink, but no plumbing. No plumbing.
No, but tell them about the bathroom in the winter. That's important.
Oh, the outhouse?
Yeah, tell them about the winter.
Yeah. They had an outhouse, a toilet, jarlong. And we'd have to go out, in
the backyard.
Dark and the cold in the backyard.
Yeah.
And
We know that.
But because it's winter,
Yeah.
It's hard.
as we're watching the winter, as the winter gets,
I see.
as it gets further along, the pile's getting higher and higher. And it's frozen. It's frozen.
Okay, don't stay there.
It is a little scary. We're wondering
Yeah.
how long will winter last?
Apartment in Sanshan, the pipe get broken and
yeah, so we eventually moved out of this family's home, even though it was warm there. The children's center offered us this apartment, and the apartment had no heat. So because the pipes underground had burst. So we moved into an apartment with no heat, and we at first were washing our clothes by hand in the bathtub with cold water unless we heated it. And so that was a big chore, a big job, because especially with jeans, trying to wring them out was very difficult. And then, to hang them, they were just dripping wet. So having, enough places to hang clothes was a challenge. And then because we had no heat in the place, we had to heat the kitchen with the oven. We would turn on the oven, and I'd open the oven door to heat the kitchen. If we left milk out at night in the kitchen, it would be frozen on the top in the morning. So it was almost as cold in the kitchen at night as the refrigerator, because we did have a refrigerator. So
Maybe you didn't need a refrigerator at that time.
yeah.
Just kidding.
So yeah, we almost didn't need a refrigerator. So we lived in the kitchen during the day, and we lived in the bedroom at night. So the bedroom, we put a 2-burner stove. We'd heat up the bedroom with a 2-burner stove.
Mm-hmm.
We also had 2 Mongolian space heaters, but they were pretty rough. You know,
Space heater.
yeah, they were just like a coil that was, round, around,
Heater thing.
and on like a little stool type thing, a metal stool.
Okay.
So they weren't that warm, but they helped a little bit. So I was always cold. I had to wear multiple layers plus my down coat in the house, multiple socks and my boots in the house. I would have worn gloves and probably a hat if I could have. Well, I guess I could have worn a hat. But I mean, I would have worn gloves, but I couldn't wear gloves because you're always washing something with children and cooking and, cleaning. You can't be wearing gloves. So I was so glad when I would go to my Mongolian language tutor's house because she had a house and they actually had this wood burning or coal burning stove kind of thing that heated up their house. And it was so much warmer than our apartment. So I could go to my language tutor's house and I would thaw out. Like, the ice would start falling off of me. And I would get nice and warm. My feet would get warm. My hands would get warm. And then I'd go back to our cold apartment. And I would be cold again.
Oh.
So my hands and my feet and my nose were always cold until nighttime. And then the best way to heat up your feet at night is to stick them in some hot water. That will warm them up the fastest. Because I tried warming them up with a hairdryer when my feet were inside the sleeping bag and my sleeping bag caught on fire. So that's not a good method.
But you were warm.
I was very warm. I was very warm, but my sleeping bag was kind of ruined. So we slept together, my husband and daughter and I, on 2 beds in sleeping bags with Mongolian camel hair blankets over us.
That's warm.
And that's how we stayed warm, I guess.
How long you lived in Sunshine?
2 years.
2 years, but
lived in
only
Sunshine.
one winter was that bad? Another winter was better?
Well, they finally got the heat going in the pipes under the ground, and then it came into our apartment. But unfortunately, we were gone when the heat arrived in our apartment. And when the heat arrived in our apartment, the radiators were ice cold. So this hot water came surging into the freezing cold radiators and cracked the radiators. So our apartment went from a deep freeze, because it was like living in a deep freeze. Our living room was a deep freeze. It went from deep freeze to hot sauna. All the windows got steamed up.
So remember, the pipes are burst and now steam's coming out.
So there's
All the
steam
time.
in the whole apartment. Our door that my husband had just bought, a really nice carved wooden door, expanded so much that we couldn't even. He came from Ulaanbaatar to remedy the situation. He couldn't even get the door open to get in to let the workers come in. And once they had to chisel away at the wooden door so they could finally open it. When he finally got the workers in to work on the radiators, they didn't even work on the radiators. They just went around our apartment and looked in all the drawers and looked at everything that we had. And then they found the trouble game, and the trouble began.
Okay, wait, Mom, you have to explain. What's it? Okay.
They started playing the trouble game.
Are you saying with trouble? It's a game?
It should be fixed.
Yeah, we thought they were going to fix the radiator. But
They loved the bubble. It was like a bubble. You push it down, and the dice shoot up.
you pop it, and it gives like
dice pops
6 and 7, and you move your...
Yeah,
It's a game. It's a silly game, but kids game. But
and they played trouble for hours.
Whoa.
And my husband was getting more and more agitated and irritated and aggravated. He's like, they came here to fix the radiator, and they're playing the trouble game. And then it was like God spoke to his heart, and he said, this is what you're here for. You're here for Mongols. You're here to be with them.
I mean, they're in our apartment.
They're in your apartment. They're enjoying themselves.
And they're hanging out.
What are you getting all hot around the collar?
God, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
What are you getting all hot around the collar about? I mean, isn't this why you came to Mongolia, to be with Mongols? And so he kind of felt convicted by the Lord, and he was like, okay, chill, John, don't get all upset. Just let them play trouble, and when they are ready, they'll get around to fixing the radiator. So then he was a lot more relaxed and, laughing with them and having a good time. And they finally, I think, did fix the radiator.
They did?
Yeah. And your son was born.
Yeah.
Yes. Our
son
was named
Israel.
by the governor.
Uh-huh.
It even said that in the article, the name of the governor, right?
Chimega, I forgot the name. Chimega or something like that.
Was he born in that cold winter or he was after that?
He was born in March.
Okay.
But he was born in
1994.
Ulaanbaatar.
Okay.
In
Yeah.
Ulaanbaatar?
Yeah, because we went up to Ulaanbaatar for his birth. Our mission wanted us to leave Mongolia and go to America and have him, and we're like, why? We're not worried about having a baby in Mongolia. And they kept saying, oh, you need to come back to America and have your baby. And we're like, no, we're going to have our baby here.
Yeah, why not?
Why not?
Mongols do. Why couldn't we? I mean, it's...
Yeah. So we went ahead and had our baby boy, Gobing who the governor had named, and that means son of the Gobi. His American name or biblical name is Israel, Adam.
First American boy
Yeah.
who was born in Mongolia.
Yeah, first American boy.
That's amazing.
Can I read that news?
Oh, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
neat.
That newspaper article title said that American boy who delivered in Mongolia.
Okay.
I'll read it in Mongolian.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. It said-
Your Mongolian is very good. I'm telling you.
Thank you though. Монгол мэндэлсэн энэхүү. Хаагазны хүмүүсийн дотор харь илгийн хэрнээ халуун дотны хүмүүс бас байх юм. Америкийн нэгдсэн улсын иргэн Монгол туслах олон улсын мэрэгчлэнүүд байгууллагын ажилтан Джон болон түүний эхнэр Вонил Ютис нарыг Дорногов аймгийнхан ялангуяа Сайн шамдынхан бол бүрч хандахгүй. Тэд охин хүү хоёртой том охин нь гэрэл цэцэг гэдэг монгол нэртэй. Аав ээж охин гуруулаад их хилээр маань чөлөөтэй ярина. Энэ оны 3 дугаар сарын 18-ны өглөө 9 цаг 20 минутанд Шведийн иргэн их баригч Мари Викторисны хариуцлагатай хүндхэн эрүүл чирэх хүүгийн час хийх дуунаар өндөрлөв. Энэхүү анх удаагийн дараах хүүгийн энхий дуун хүн болохоо тунхаглан говийн тэнгэрт хадлаа. Дорногов аймгийн засаг дарга одон чимэггүй хайрласан говийн хүү гэдэг нэрээр нутгийн хүмүүс аав ээжийнхэн найз нөхдөж дуудана. Монгол мэдлсэн говийн хүү. Харин бяцхан амьтан төрснөөс хойш 3 сарын турш агаараар намсгаж усаар нь ундалж яваа хэдий ч говь төрсөн гişлэгийг нь авах тийм ч хялбар биш байгаа ажээ. Okay, this is a really cool article. We just read it
That's neat.
after you guys got here and we translated it. It's just really amazing. It's not about Gavinku. It's about like your family. This article, how your family is known as the warm-hearted people, and
Well, we had a hard time though when we were in the Gobi. The governor loved us. He was very nice to us. So that's why I went to him and I said, "Please name our son. Give him a Mongolian name. We want."
ask it?
Yes, yeah. It was important because I wanted to honor him.
Oh, such honor.
By rooting our son in that province in that city. He was very good to us. He gave us favor. But the man we were assigned to, the children's center guy,
director.
he was always drunk and he hated us. So I would be in his office. Norman. I'm in his office and he picks up the phone and he calls the police and says, "I want this American out of here. How can we get out? I'm out of here."
Oh,
and I'm there.
really?
And I'm like,
you speak Mongolian. You understand.
well, I understood enough. Yeah. And he's calling the local police. And it's like, come on. So eventually he got us kicked out because we had a small group of believers meeting in our house. And at that time, the government was starting to change. 1994, 95. And they would allow religious groups to meet if they registered with the government. So you have to register. We're a Buddhist group. We're a Christian group. These are the people who are part of our group. You have to give a list of names. This is where we meet. These are the times. And so if you're registered and the government registers you can meet. If they don't, you're illegal. So we tried to register. We get a church in Ulaanbaatar, tried every way we could try to register, and they would never register us. The police, that's how they kicked us out. So they said, you're meeting illegally in our country. You have to leave. And we said, we don't want to meet illegally. What can we do to register? He said, oh, I'm sorry. We can't register you. So they kicked us out.
Well, because it was only teenagers that were in the church. And they said it has to be adult Mongols.
Well, and we had adults come from Ulaanbaatar. We tried everything, really. Tried to be like a branch or a satellite church from Munkin or a church in Ulaanbaatar and say, oh, no, they're part of our church, but they're meeting here. And they wouldn't, nothing would work because he didn't like us. And so it was good because when we left, the church starts to grow better. Because foreigners can stay too long. It's true.
You guys planted that church.
Yes.
Yeah, but you know what happened? Here's the key in Mongolia. Early, can I give you just 3 keys early?
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
The first thing that really began, foreigners were going, but nothing was happening. No fruit, nothing.
Foreigners were going where?
Into Mongolia, nothing happening. And then a group of
I don't think so.
First Nations, American Indians came, Navajo. A lot of connections with Mongolians from the past. Similar
Do you know
language,
what year
similar
that
thing.
was?
1990 or 91, I don't know. So this team of Indians come in and they are on national television at the Nadam, and they get a lot of exposure and they're sharing their Christian faith with their Mongolian cousins. And the Mongolians are starting, because there's a different look. They don't look like Westerners, like Russians,
Yes.
Europeans. They're all Christians,
Yeah.
but they look like us, and they're Christian. So that was a beginning of something stirring in Mongol hearts at that time. Very interesting. 3 people came to the Lord. Bold Batur, have you heard that name?
No.
Is he pastor now?
Yeah.
He's now the head pastor of, probably, if it's the same.
He's an
person.
older man though. He must be my age.
If
No.
he's the same person, he's now head pastor of the biggest church in Mongolia.
Oh, it could be. And another man, Basanhu,
Living with.
Bas-
and another man. So those 3. Now this is important moment. So now we have in the country 3 new believers. So not from East Europe, like the original Mongol 5, but now we have Mongols that have come to the Lord in Mongolia. Now, the foreigner, so I would go and I would try to share with Mongolians with an interpreter, nothing. Yeah, of course you're Christian, nothing, no effect. Then I'd say, Bold, don't interpret me, share your testimony. So we'd be in a ger in the countryside, and when I stopped talking, and he started sharing his testimony, the focus was amazing. All of a sudden, not only were the ears hearing,
Heart.
but the heart. Because now it's a Mongol sharing why I became a Christian, how I became a Christian. They knew this wasn't he wasn't born into it like Americans or Russians. That was amazing breakthrough. So in the Gobi, the one thing we learned there, we're not alone. It's not our testimony. We're not going to have much effect. So that's why we brought Oyun Gerol to live with us. She would speak. She would share.
Okay.
We were there. We were Christian. We were high profile. Everybody knew us. She's the one who bore the fruit. You know what I mean? So
Yes, now I get it.
when God switched from the foreigner, we were there to start, but it really took off when the Mongols were sharing their own testimony. So then at that point, when we were kicked out of the Gobi, we could have lived in Mongolia, but we thought, Lord, if you are using Mongols and they're now becoming church leaders, we need to leave. Because the worst thing foreigners can do is try to lead. We should not lead. Mongols should lead. You're a far better Mongolian leader than I will ever be. I mean that kind of funny, but it's true. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, I think it's a wisdom too.
So what happened was people like us the government started giving us pressure but it was God trying to get us out of Mongolia so that the Mongol church could blossom. It was good. Because then he moves us to the next place, and the Mongolian bride is starting to get beautiful and strong, and you know what I mean? So that's important. Okay.
So that was the first
Yeah.
thing. The Native Americans. You said there were 3 things.
Yeah, I said Native Americans, the testimony of the early three, Basanhu, Bolbotter, and Mr. Chi, and then Oyun Gero in the Gobi Desert.
Oh, okay.
Oyun Gero was the one of the first Christian, was she?
I mean, the first 2 years, so
Okay,
young.
okay, I got it.
Yeah.
But she was
And
from the Gobi.
When did
Her
you
family
leave Mongolia?
was from the Gobi.
95.
95.
Summer
Was it,
95.
which month was it?
Summer.
Summer.
June,
Oh.
July. Yeah,
July.
maybe July.
Was it hard to leave Mongolia? I know it was from God, and you saw that the benefit
So-
to leaving Mongolia.
I had to pull her in and drag her. She didn't want to get into Mongolia. And
I
then
was
when it was
afraid.
time to leave, I had to pull her. She didn't want to leave.
I'm sorry, Yvonne.
I think I was scared going in, but then, God just gave me a heart for the Mongols, and I just felt,
You love.
a love for them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember we went out to Arhangai, Setserlek?
Still yes.
Arhangai. And we were staying with my friend Sadnam's family.
Mm-hmm.
And,
No, that's Bulgan, I mean. Bulgan?
oh, that was Bulgan? Okay, I don't know why I thought it was Arhangai.
Arvak,
Okay, Bulgan,
Tistirlik is in Arvak. No, I mean in Arhangai.
But this family, this was a different...
Bulgan,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, no.
Good.
So Bulganimic, we stayed with our friends. She was actually my language teacher. I was her first
Mongol.
American or Western student.
Her son is a pastor, the one with the... Remember the...
So Sadnam she was a Mongol language teacher for Mongolians, but then she became my teacher, and then I recommended her to other people, and she ended up teaching a lot of other foreigners.
Oh.
And so she gave up teaching Mongol kids language because she said the foreigners were so much more receptive. They wanted to learn Mongolian. They paid well.
They pay better.
So,
But her whole
anyways,
family became believers.
Yeah.
It was beautiful.
Really?
Yeah, it was really,
Wow,
beautiful.
that's so good.
Really beautiful,
That's
yeah.
good.
and she said I was the first one. She actually came to visit us not visit us, I'm sorry. She came just to visit the Millards, who have gone into Mongolia quite a few times. They live in Japan.
Funny, too
And
much
she was
information.
speaking at a church, and she was sharing that I was the first one to share the gospel with her. And she had me stand up, which was amazing because it was like, I didn't even know that I was going to get to see her, but a friend of mine told me, oh, there's a Mongol woman who's coming to town. And so I asked her what her name was, and I think she found out the name, and I said, I think she's my friend. So then I called the lady who she was going to be staying with, and she confirmed that it was Sadna, my friend.
Oh.
And so I surprised her. We came over to this American lady's house. She was the relative of the Millards.
Bonnie, I think you're losing us.
Yeah.
We got
Anyways, I came over to their house, and she was in the kitchen, and then they brought her out, and she saw me, and she was like, Bonnie! And we hugged, and it was so wonderful to see her.
You lead her to Christ, and her family changed, and her son become a pastor, and
Yeah.
who knows that son
Yeah,
reached how many
that's,
people? How many people? That's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing.
Yeah,
about
they were our best
missionary.
friends there. They were really good.
Yeah.
I mean,
The other thing is, our mission actually... So, our mission sent more people in, so all of a sudden we have a few teams in the country. And with us.
presented the gospel to her. She didn't pray with me, but she,
Her
was the
daughter came to
first,
the Lord first, yeah, and
was
then
the first
whole family.
president. I mean, it was the first person that presented the gospel to her. So, she has a daughter named Yanjin, and her other daughter Irene.
Okay.
Yeah, who
Yeah,
who went to Bible school in England, but she
Funny.
drowned.
Yeah.
And what was the hard for leaving Mongolia for you?
So I was telling you about Volga and I
I was pulling you.
with the family,
Sorry.
and it was so hard we were just leaving them to go back to Ulaanbaatar, but I remember I was crying. It was like her sister or her sister-in-law, and I just remember like giving her a hug, and I was crying because I didn't know when I'd see them again.
Aww.
So it was just really sad.
Yeah.
And, just leaving the, Mongol believers in Сайн was really sad because, God just knit our hearts together with their hearts, and they were so sweet. They welcome us, when you come in on the train.
Yeah, so remember the first time we came on the train alone, and they didn't meet us, and it was every time we carried also. After there were believers, they would always come and they would carry our daughter, carry the trunks, carry everything, like Mongols. But they loved us then. Then it was that they'd always meet us.
Things changed.
Yeah.
Or they'd see us off.
So much better, yeah. We had a family then. It was,
Yeah.
I understand.
So there's a book about, is it the Cherokees? It's called I Buried My Heart at Wounded Knee. Is that the Cherokees?
Sioux, but that's okay. I'm not sure
Sioux,
what, yeah.
The Sioux Native Americans.
Sioux Indians, yeah.
Sioux Indians. So when we were leaving Mongolia for good, I felt like I buried my heart in Mongolia. I felt like part of my heart was being left behind in Mongolia. And, I felt like as we were leaving, it's just like, Mongolia was our life. And it was, it was our focus, it was our devotion. And it was just like, how can we change that, and go to another people, when we have so much love for this people.
Because remember, we were going into Mongolia thinking we would die there. We never thought about leaving. We just thought you go to a country, you live your life there.
Whole life.
But God did things so quickly. I mean, the national church just grew up that in that sense, it was easier leaving, knowing that there was a good church in Mongolia at that time. You know what I mean? So we weren't leaving like, if we left, oh no, everything's going to fall apart.
One touching story that Yvonne shared with me, that she met some Mongolians in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
And just tell us about that. Tell us about it. That was just, that made me cry.
Yeah.
Just tell us about it. When was it? And just that.
Well, our son Emmanuel was about 1 year old, 2
This
years
guy?
old. Yeah.
Wow.
So I'd gone up to visit our friend who works for the FBI. She's an Iraqi Christian. And so I was staying at her house. And I was going into Washington, D.C. and going to like the Smithsonian Institute, which is like a lot of museums. National museums with my son, my baby boy. And so I was traveling, I think either into the city or out of the city. And I was at a metro station. And I'm walking on the platform. And I see, these people that had, kind of Asian faces. And I was kind of wondering, I wonder where they're from. They kind of look Mongolian. But then as I passed them, I heard the Mongolian language. And I was like, they're Mongolian. And just like we would get thrilled before we moved to Mongolia, whenever we would find some Mongols, like on the tram in Czechoslovakia or on the
East Berlin or
Berlin or in Budapest on the metro, whenever we see some Mongols, we get all excited. Well, this was like after the fact, after we moved from Mongolia, hearing these Mongols and seeing them, I was so excited. And so I came up to them and I just started talking Mongolian, and they're like, how do you know Mongolian? And so I told them that, we had lived in Mongolia and we had been missionaries there, and how we just really loved the Mongolian people. And I just said I was so happy to, find them and meet them. And I'm like, what are you doing in Washington, D.C.? And they said they were living there. And I was like, Mongols living in Washington, D.C.? I was like, it just seems very bizarre.
Times have changed, yeah.
Yeah, like, I guess I'm kind of out of step with what's happening. So anyways, they're like, oh yeah, come over to our apartment, we'll make bows, and I don't know what else they said, but
drink a little vodka. No.
I know it's true.
What was the the wheat vodka?
Ooh.
That was
Idek? No. Yeah. Idek. A-R-K-E.
Yeah, that's a vodka.
Okay. So I said, oh, I'm so sorry. I would love to come to your apartment, but we're leaving. You know, we're leaving tomorrow, and so I won't be able to come. And so I was disappointed that, you know, we wouldn't have been able to meet again. And as I was talking with them, I just started crying, and they're like looking at me like, why are you crying? And I just said, I'm just so happy.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah, but we won't
now it's more general that, you know, what is the greatest thing that being a missionary? Like, what do you say to the people who are missionary, who want to be missionary? What is the greatest thing? Just
honestly, the greatest thing by far is we get to be with Jesus and beat his heartbeat.
Feel his heartbeat.
In other words, being a missionary is usually in a situation that's hard and difficult, and we get to a closer relationship with Jesus by being a missionary. That's awesome. That's worth everything. In the book of Revelation, chapter 19, it says this: there's going to be a trumpet sound and a shout. Yeah? And the shout is going to be, hallelujah, the bride has made herself ready. And with that, and then Jesus comes back. That means there's a final generation on earth. There's a last generation. They may be 3 years old now. They may be 17. There's a final generation. And somebody from that generation is going to be sharing their faith with the last person on earth who needs to hear the gospel. And when that person says, I need Jesus, and they bow their knee, that final generation, think about it.
That final person.
When that final person is in and the bride is complete, she's made herself ready, the heavens will open up, the trumpet will sound, and Jesus will return.
Okay, yeah.
There's a final generation that will do that. It's not our generation. Too late. It could be your generation, or it could be the generation
Next generation, maybe.
born today.
Yeah.
But there's going to be a final word given from the final generation that's going to end, and then we go home. So what I'd say, young people, if you don't want to live old and die, if you don't want to live in this terrible life a long time, share Jesus now and finish it. When the bride's complete, we go home.
Amen.
It's really simple. It really is. But we need a generation to take that on. No generation has done it. So our job is to help your generation. Your job is to help even the next generation. Yeah? I'll take you this far, you'll go farther, and the next generation will finish it. That's amazing, guys. A final word spoken to one last believer, and it's over.
it's amazing.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it together, yeah?
Yeah, we'll
Yes.
continue talk, but we'll finish the podcast by this question.
Beautiful.
And
Yeah.
thank you so much for your
Thank you.
ministry,
We love you guys.
Yeah.
Come on.
your heart for
Yeah, it's
Mongolia,
really encouraging.
and you invested not just 5 years living in Mongolia, and before ahead of almost 10 years before you started planning to go to Mongolia, and and I saw that as a precious jewelry in your life. It's like
Wow.
really amazing to hear that, and thank you very much. And,
Thank you so much.
today is here
Yeah, God's good.
Yvonne and
Yeah.
John Lutz,
Yeah.
and then Ozzy,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's our first podcast, and we want to continue to talk about mission works, God's
Praise
work.
God. Yeah, amen.
And
Yeah, that's
It's
the
working everywhere.
best thing.
yes.
Thank you.